What's going on, everybody? Mike Singer, blueandgold.com, joined by Patrick Engel, also with blueandgold.com. Recording a new commitment breakdown video presented by JFQ Lending, and the commit we're talking about today is a running back. Notre Dame got a running back commitment in the 2021 class, Patrick. Logan
How about that?
Diggs. Yeah, how about that? Logan Diggs from Louisiana picked Notre Dame over the likes of Arizona, Arizona State, Arkansas, Colorado, Michigan State, Ole Miss, Nebraska, Oklahoma State. And the last school I mentioned, he had about 30 offers in total. The last school I mentioned that offered him was USC. Really came down to Notre Dame and USC. A little bit of back and forth there. You can check out kind of the details of how the commitment came together at blueandgold.com. But picks Notre Dame. Patrick, let's start with him as a player. I'll give my thoughts, but I want to hear what you have to say first about when you pop on the tape and watch Logan Diggs. What do you see on film?
You see a lot of intriguing traits as a runner where, first off, you notice he's a big guy, 6 foot, listed already 190 pounds, certainly has some strength that you notice when he runs, but a lot of controlled running and a lot of efficient cuts with patience, but not dawdling to the point where it's unproductive patience. Good vision, and even at that bigger size, has some make you miss ability, and even without elite top end speed, but still enough. Plenty good as a receiver. Maybe not the most expanded of route trees and route repertoires, but a a guy who can project as a three down back with a receiving ability and as well as just a pure size being able to hold up as a pass blocker. So definitely an intriguing type of addition here who in being likely the only running back that Notre Dame takes in 2021, certainly wanted someone who has some upside and kind of can do a lot of things, fairly well. So a good pickup here in the sense that he kind of covers a lot of bases. And even though no, of course, he's not Will Shipley, and that was everyone's sights set on that. Still a Notre Dame found a good player here out of Louisiana.
Man, I really have so many thoughts. When you watch his tape, there's a clip early on where it's kind of him standing up before he gets down in his running back stance. And you look at him, you're like, man, he looks like a receiver. And he is a good receiving back. Patrick, I remember when we recorded the video talking about Jack Nickel, Notre Dame's 2022 tight end commitment. The biggest thing for me I said about him was that he's just really good at everything. Like he might not be a 5-star caliber prospect, but everything he does, he's really good at. There's no glaring weaknesses in his game. With Diggs, I feel like it's pretty similar, Patrick. I agree with you that he doesn't have the best top end speed in the world. He is a track guy, but you know, I would think Will Shipley could probably beat him in a 100-meter race. So he doesn't have that same kind of elite top end speed, but his make you miss ability is so good. His short area quickness, he has such great burst and agility. He pass blocks, he catches the ball well. He again, just pretty much everything you look for in a running back, he can do. And the biggest thing I like about him is his toughness. You're getting a guy from Louisiana who has been fairly productive at that level. I believe coming off of a state championship down there in some competitive ball in New Orleans area. So he's just got that kind of dog mentality in him that he 6 foot 190. That's a really good size, but with that height, he's not like a power back. But he certainly looks like it because he's just carrying guys with him, and he's a strong kid, but it's just willpower. He's just got that mentality that I'm contacted. Okay, great. Here's 4 more yards for you. He's just that the mentality. I can't speak highly enough about how important that is. That he's just a tough kid. He's got the agility. He's got the quickness. Again, he might not be the best sprinter in the world, but I don't think it's going to be a major area of concern because of just how good he is at everything else.
Yeah, you certainly think about what the floor is with him, and certainly looking at all the things that he does well, and you kind of think that it's higher than the floor of a lot of other three-star guys out there, or certainly higher than the floor of some guys Notre Dame has signed in recent classes. Maybe certainly not Chris Tyree, but perhaps somebody has on the roster upper class guys already, and kind of you can see him whenever he gets on the field first, fitting in a variety of roles, whether that's a third down or receiving back or an early down guy, just because of the general well-roundedness, I guess.
Patrick, one thing I want to discuss is you mentioned Will Shipley earlier, and of course that's the guy that Notre Dame really targeted early, and he picked Clemson. As someone who covers recruiting, um, I'm probably a little bit to blame of all of the hype that was created in that Will Shipley recruitment with Notre Dame. It was bonkers. I mean, there would be websites, posting daily articles on Will Shipley, and again, I'm probably some to blame there as well. But you look at different positions, offensive line, someone like Landon Tangwall, who Notre Dame fans are like, I haven't heard that name in a while. Landon Tingle. Yeah, he was a really important offensive line target for Notre Dame that they went after hard for over a year, just like with Will Shipley's, a year and a few days from the time he offered to committed to Clemson that Notre Dame was after him. So, I mean, equally as important targets in my opinion. You look at Landon Tangwell and Will Shipley, and I'm sure I could point to some other guys as well, but Shipley is the one who had all of the hype. So Notre Dame fans, who just are maybe casual followers of recruiting, look at Will Shipley, who was a composite 5-star, even though no site actually listed him as a 5-star, but he had a composite ranking of 5-star. That is what it is. But so then they look at a guy with Diggs, who's a kind of a mid-level 3-star and might not be as excited, but I mentioned Shipley has better top end speed, but Shipley, in my opinion, might be close to being a finished product. And I don't mean that as a slight to Will. Um, that might be something that you look at as a huge positive because his floor is probably the highest floor of a running back you're going to find because how good Will Shipley is, but how much better can he get as a player? Then with Diggs, especially if he can get faster. This is just an all around, like I've mentioned so many times, just such an all around, tough minded, just mentally strong player who has a really high ceiling. How is his ceiling as high as Will Shipley's? I don't know if Diggs is going to be a better player than Will Shipley, but Notre Dame fan watching this, listening to this, just don't get down on, man, this is the replacement for Shipley. This is what we got, because just throw on the tape. You can watch it certainly on this video here too. Diggs is a really nice player.
And I hate to belabor the point here of he's not Will Shipley or whatever, but Diggs was Notre Dame's first post Will Shipley commitment offer.
Yeah,
And considering how the Shipley recruitment and Notre Dame's strategy within that played out, there was always a chance that Notre Dame was going to find itself on the spot it did on the morning of May 5th, I believe it was, the day after Shipley committed, that, all right, we've got to start either from scratch a little bit with some new options or, continue to turn up the heat from simmering
yeah,
to boiling on some guys they were already on before, such as Donovan Edwards. But considering that and kind of where it started or had to restart in a sense after the Shipley commitment, I think this is a pretty good outcome,
yeah,
all told,
yeah,
where able to get a top 30 guy that was wanted by teams that Notre Dame plays and has certainly similar expectations to Notre Dame and USC. And you can say what you want about USC's recent recruiting efforts and whatever the stability or perceived instability does there, but someone that still aspires to win national titles
yeah.
wanted to keep. And that's not to say that every kid that USC or anyone that wants to win titles recruits is going to be some game changer that helps them get there. But at least in that sense, the fact that, they want you to be one of 85 players on the roster says something. So to be able to kind of go and dip into your secondary plans in a sense and get a Diggs type of guy, I think is a pretty good thing. And
Yeah.
just as there was always a chance that Notre Dame would end up kind of having to dip into some other options and expand the board if not getting Shipley, there was also always a chance that whoever they came up and away with out of that, all told on signing day or whenever they get a commitment, in this case now, would still be a pretty good player. And for Notre Dame to be able to offer a Logan Diggs, a kid who was already in demand at the point they offered him in May, and get him to commit without a visit. And of course, there's it's not like Notre Dame's the only school he hasn't been able to visit during all this. Is a pretty good outcome and just a good resolution for recruitment and running back recruitment that I'm sure we know had been a cause of some consternation. But in the end, to ultimately be able to kind of jump in there, maybe later than most, I don't know what number uh, offer Notre Dame was for Diggs, but to be able to kind of alter the recruitment landscape and get that kind of kid, I still think is a big deal when you just look at the process of how this came together.
Yeah. Everyone likes to talk about Notre Dame put all their eggs into the Will Shipley basket. I would say maybe they put maybe eight eight eggs of the dozen. They started talking to Diggs even before the pandemic. So Shipley was going to come in for that March 20th weekend. They were already talking to Diggs and had interest in Diggs. It just, they didn't want to offer him until they knew what happened with Shipley. And so everyone wants to question the running back strategy with in terms of recruiting, and you still can. That's certainly you're right, but hey, it worked out here. They waited till Shipley went elsewhere and then offered Diggs. Another thing I wanted to point out was maybe about a month ago or so, Patrick, everyone's complaining about offensive recruiting, and we have had one commitment since October on the offensive side of the ball. And of course, that one guy picked Notre Dame over LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Michigan. But hey, let's just dismiss that. Well, now Notre Dame's got Logan Diggs committed, who I feel is a solid back. Joe Alt, who, again, that kind of plan B type player, but with his upside, I've written a lot. We've talked a lot about him at blueandgold.com. The upside of that guy as offensive tackle is huge. Notre Dame's already got its first couple of 2022 commitments, so they're plugging along here. Offensive recruiting, it's does it really matter if they were spread out, these maybe 4 or 5 commitments, if they're spread out over 4 months or if they happen in 2 weeks? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter when they commit. So Notre Dame offensive recruiting is fine. Class is not falling apart. Is it a national championship level class? I probably not. We'll see, but on any given day, maybe, but I probably wouldn't say that this is a class. If you look on paper, that's better than an Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama's recruiting so well in July, Patrick. But still, all in all, Notre Dame is such a solid 10-win program in that range, Patrick, of depending how you look at it, tier 2 or 3. And Logan Diggs is at least that caliber of a player.
And of course, there's the footnote of yes, he's not the Will Shipley, and the easiest way, of course, to find the national championship level classes and beat the Clemsons and Ohio States and Alabamas and whatnot is get the kids that they're recruiting. And of course, none of those were involved for Diggs in a sense, or really at all. But I think
LSU was getting close to offering. They just won a national championship. So
exactly, yep. And you can kind of look at Diggs as a little bit of a kind of the whole thing and how it came together is some kind of a lesson in mutual exclusivity here, where yeah, it's okay to be disappointed that Notre Dame didn't get the guy that was at the top of its board for a year or whatever it was, but and to understand, like, yeah, if if don't like the strategy that was employed there, then that's okay. But certainly I think something that was that was what they felt was necessary to be able to try to connect on the home run swing they wanted to take. And of course, part of that was going to be, potential that, you swing and a miss, but not necessarily, striking out on one pitch, really, where, at that point it was 7 months until signing day, where they had to certainly when you take an approach in the sense that they did, you have to be confident that, okay, when you do dip into backup plans and dip into other things, or turn up the heat on some guys you've been on but not on as hard as will, that you've got to be able to win one of those in effective recruitment. And instead, it's not just the whole thing of how many eggs did they put in the basket, all or nothing here, but okay, we're going to do this. And if you miss, you've got to be confident that they can get someone who's still good enough. And I think now I think that's pretty clear that that part of the equation worked. Had it been either someone that they kind of reached for in December or whatnot, or tried to pluck away from someone, or just decided to pass on the position altogether, then I think it's a different story. But being able to kind of execute kind of basically hit when you're down 0-2 in the count, I think is something that's not really discussed or really had been discussed in the whole 2021 running back recruiting strategy. And certainly it seemed like the staff was pretty confident in their ability to do that all along. And certainly it shows up in the Logan Diggs commitment.
Well, that's breaking down Logan Diggs. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. If you're listening to us in a podcast version form, thank you very much. You can always shoot us feedback via email. My email is msinger@blueandgold.com, Twitter at BGI News, or go to blueandgold.com, and there's a contact us page there as well. And this is our commitment breakdown presented by JFQ Lending.